DA hold media briefing after decision not to hike VAT anymore. We are going to bring to you the Democratic Alliance DA, the press conference, where they will discuss their significant victory against the VAT hike. The DA had opposed the tax increase, citing its potential impact on a struggle South Africa. Recently, the Minister of Finance lawyer approached the DA legal representative with a proposal for an out-of-court settlement following DA's application to stop the VAT increase. This development marked a major win for DA, as they have said. A major win for DA, who claims it's a turning point in their fight against unjust financial burden. Let's go and watch the DA briefing with their national spokesperson. But before then, please, if you are a new subscriber or a new person to this family, please try to subscribe, like, and share. Press the button so that we can notify you when we bring you these videos like this. Here we react trending videos, make our own comments, and speak our mind without looking at any person's face. If it is what you would like to see, subscribe, like, and share. Press the button so that we can notify you when we bring you something like this. But for my returner subscribers, thank you very, very much. We don't take you for granted. We appreciate what you've been doing, returning back. We see everything. We see your comments. We see everything. Thank you very, very much. We are not taking you for granted. Thank you for supporting us. And for the new, please support us too and do just to subscribe. Thank you. Let's go and watch that video. We'll come back and react to it again. And drop your comment. Let's see what you think about this VAT hike that has been paused of it for now. Let's go and watch that video.
After the deliberations that took place, it became clear to everybody that the Democratic Alliance had a very strong case in this regard. Yesterday afternoon, we were contacted by the lawyers for the Minister of Finance, in which they requested to meet with us in order to propose an out-of-court settlement with regards to our court case. The Democratic Alliance obviously will be willing to sit down with the Minister and his legal team to see what they propose with regards to that. It is very clear from the onset that the Democratic Alliance did not approve any increase in taxes whatsoever. We were firm in that stance, and that is why we voted against the fiscal framework when it was presented on the 1st of April to the Standing Committee and the Select Committee on Finance. We made an amendment proposal that was not agreed to, but the ANC, with the help of smaller parties like Action SA and BOSA, then managed to vote through the fiscal framework that made provision for an increase in VAT. The Democratic Alliance made it very clear that that process was flawed and that you can either vote for the amendment, vote for the fiscal framework in its form as it was presented, or you can vote for amendment. You cannot vote for the fiscal framework and come afterwards and say that we will make some regulations that will change it. You've either got to vote for it or you can amend it. And that is the amendment that the Democratic Alliance proposed, was for VAT not to be increased. So this is where we are today. We want to thank each and every South African that fought with us to prevent this VAT from increasing. And it is now really a privilege for me to introduce Mrs. Helen Zille, the chairperson of our Federal Council, to address this media briefing on the court case and on what is transpiring within this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Vili and Karabo and all my colleagues. It's been a long run to this point, but I think today is a cause for celebration because it is the clearest indication yet of what it means to enable a party like the Democratic Alliance, fighting for the people of South Africa, to have the balance of power in the national parliament. It is where we can make your voice count, because you gave us the muscle and you gave us the numbers to be able to stand up and stop things that will be fundamentally detrimental to the people of South Africa. So that is a cause for celebration, and it is one of the moments that we can look back and say what the election of 2024 actually meant. It gave us the balance of power in Parliament, and it enables us to take a strong stand to be your voice, to stop the things that you don't want. And today is one of those victories. Now, it came as a surprise to me when very late last night I was called by our lawyers to say, we have been approached with a settlement offer by the lawyers for the Minister of Finance. Why did that take me by surprise? Because less than 1 week before that, in his answering affidavit in our court case, the Minister of Finance made it absolutely clear that the VAT increase of 0.5% would go ahead on the 1st of May. And that was merely a week ago today. And in that replying affidavit, it's a thick wad of paper which is over here, the Minister says the VAT rate is therefore set to increase to 15.5% on the 1st of May. That was the culmination of a long argument as to why it was necessary and why it was unavoidable. And then he says the process to pass this type of legislation contemplated in 7.4 is already underway. On the 12th of March, I published the draft rates and monetary amounts and amendment of revenue laws bill. A copy of the draft bill is attached, where he shows that they will give permanent legislative effect to the new VAT rate of 15.5%. Now, this was 1 week ago, a categorical answer in his affidavit to our court case. And so there he said there was no alternative to the VAT increase. And late last night, our lawyers were saying to me, the minister wants to reach an out-of-court settlement. Now, what happened between last Thursday and yesterday, which was Wednesday? What happened was the DA's challenge, which was heard in court on Tuesday. And that day was absolutely pivotal because our excellent legal team made the case as to why the VAT increase should be interdicted and why the minister had made the announcement in terms of an unconstitutional power allocated to him under the VAT Act. And secondly, why the process by which the Finance Portfolio Committee had supposedly adopted the fiscal framework when that proposal was actually never before the committee, and why an unlawful outcome and irrational outcome of the Finance Portfolio Committee had landed before Parliament as a whole, which adopted a fiscal framework that had unprocedurally and unlawfully and irrationally emerged out of the Portfolio Committee and the Standing Committee in the NCOP. The arguments were so clearly framed that I have no doubt that the minister's legal team went back to him on Wednesday morning, the day after our court case, and said it looks as if it is going to be inevitable that the 0.5% VAT increase that takes effect on the 1st of May could well be set aside by the court. And in that context, it seemed better for the minister to concede before he was perceived to have been forced to by the outcome of the DA's court challenge. And that is what has clearly happened in the last week. Now, it's also crucial from the DA's perspective that we set out these circumstances, because there's no doubt that the minister, in trying to save face, will seek to present this as the result of his discussions with the smaller parties. The issue that the ANC fears more than anything else is that the public will come to understand the extent of the DA's muscle in holding the balance of power and the impact that we can make both through the political process and then the legal process if the political process proves impermeable as it did this time. And so the minister needs to somehow save face by saying, I'm making this concession and I'm doing it after the consultations with the smaller parties. And obviously the smaller parties will want to claim some credit in having negotiated their way out of a VAT increase. That argument obviously cannot hold water, because a lot of negotiations had happened supposedly with the smaller parties before last Thursday. And yet last Thursday, the minister categorically said that the VAT increase would go ahead and that there was indeed no alternative to it, and that the Rates Act, as it's called in its abbreviated form, would be passed and would make provision for the 0.5% VAT increase. So it was clear that the DA's court intervention was the pivotal intervening factor that has enabled the people of South Africa to come out victorious and to show them why their vote really mattered. It is crucially important for us to hold the balance of power at the will of the voters so that we can win battles not by grace and favor of kind concessions by the ANC, but because we have the numbers in Parliament and we have the muscle in the courts and the arguments in the courts to stand up for the public who make it possible for us. This is the victory of all South African taxpayers. We'd like to thank you all for coming into this fight shoulder to shoulder with us. We'd like to thank you in your thousands for having signed our petitions and stood with us in this battle. And we will continue to fight for all South Africans, especially the poor and the marginalized, in seeking economic growth, in seeking job creation, and in seeking responsible public spending so that the government does not keep on raising your taxes to fund unlawful expenditure, corruption, and sheer waste. And so the DA will now be pushing very hard for the necessary spending review. Long before this process began, we made proposals to the national government on how we could dramatically save money in the current budget to avert and prevent an increase in any form of taxation. The minister refused to listen to this. He kept on making it an issue about cutting frontline services when all the savings that the DA had proposed avoided cutting the crucial frontline services. We want to cut waste. That's what we want to do. And we want to cut corrupt and fruitless expenditure. And that is what our spending review seeks to achieve, which will include obviously a review of all the ghost workers in the state to save many millions of rands that is costing the taxpayer at the moment. So there's going to have to be a spending review. We're going to have to look at where we can cut waste, not frontline services, and where we can protect the poor, especially from any increase in taxation that makes them have to choose between putting food on the table or putting their children into school because no longer are the VAT increases affordable. For many, they are already unaffordable. But this whole issue has not yet ended, and I do want to say there is still quite a battle to be run from this point on, because if you look at the minister's statement issued in the early hours of this morning, it says the Minister of Finance will shortly introduce the rates and monetary amounts and the Amendment of Revenue Laws Bill, which proposes to maintain the value-added tax rate at 15%. In his court papers last week, he said 15.5%. Now he's saying 15%, which shows that he's clearly backed down from the 1st of May 2025. Then he says he's doing that instead of the proposed increase to VAT announced in the budget in March. So he says he will still introduce this act, this bill, and it will be different from the one he announced in March. So he says he plans to do this, and we have concluded that that means he will do it, but there is still a gap between the intention and the result, and we have to bear that very much in mind. He says the decision to forego the increase follows extensive consultations with political parties. What he critically fails to mention is that it followed the DA's court case on Tuesday, and then suddenly on Wednesday we had this change of heart. So we are now expecting from the minister's lawyers a settlement proposal, a formal settlement proposal. We will respond to that settlement proposal through our own lawyers, and if we can reach agreement, including on the issue of costs, we will seek to have that agreement made an order of court. There is a second crucial issue that comes into play here, and that is what Parliament will do around the Portfolio Committee's acceptance of the fiscal framework, or recorded acceptance of the fiscal framework, because indeed it was never put to the Portfolio Committee. And secondly, what we are going to do about Parliament's adoption of the fiscal framework that they assumed had come from the Portfolio Committee. Now, there's no precedent that we know of how that can be set aside. We believe there are two ways. One, that a court can set aside Parliament's acceptance of the fiscal framework if it was unlawful and irrational in reaching that conclusion. And on the other hand, the Speaker can reconvene Parliament to review and rescind that decision. We don't know which path will be followed at this stage. But because there were two respondents, at least in our case, SARS was the third respondent, but there were two main respondents in our case. Number one, the Minister and obviously the Department of Finance, and two, Parliament. We have to seek a settlement agreement with both before we can say that we have beaten this VAT increase. So it's important for us to say that while victory is a nose length away, we still have to cross the finishing line. And it ain't over till it's over. So we will continue fighting. We will continue negotiating a settlement through our lawyers with the Minister's legal team and hopefully with Parliament's legal team as well. So this is a complex issue. We have fought every step of the way, and we hope that we have broken it down for you in simple steps that is clear for a layperson to understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now hand over to Karabo to handle all the questions. Thanks, Karabo.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Mamazilla. Colleagues, now as a standard protocol, we're going to open up for a round of questions. You introduce yourself, the media house that you are representing, and then to whom you're posing your questions. I see there's eagerness. I see there's already two hands this side. I'll start this side. Let me cross-check this side. Are we good? All right, there's two. Paul, you go first.
Good morning. Paul Dekiazi from Bloomberg. Just this out-of-court settlement. So, what did the minister actually ask from the DA to do? So, if he said he was going to give up the VAT increase, in response, what did he want the DA to actually do? And then secondly, where to now for the Government of National Unity? Once this is done, do you just carry on as normal, or do you go back and actually renegotiate the original letter of intent, or how do you go forward from there with the GNU? Thank you.
Thank you. Second question.
Dennis Dabort from Netwerk 24. Helen, man, ek wil net by jou hoor, wil die DA hê na hierdie hele verwikkeling nou dat die minister van Finansies Enoch Godongwana moet bedank weens hierdie groot begrotingskrisis, en tweedens net om aan te sluit by my kollega Paul se vraag, Die ANC gaan later vandag 'n media-konferensie hou met die kleiner partye wat saam met hulle gestem het vir daai fiskale begroting. Nou die DA en die Vryheidsfront Plus wat dan nou RNE-vennote is nie deel van daardie vergadering nie. Jy het self vroeër nou gesê dat die ANC gaan dit onmoontlik wil laat lyk asof hierdie uitkoms nou deel was van 'n proses wat hulle met hierdie kleiner partye gevolg het. Hoe beïnvloed dit julle deelname in die RNE? Ons weet julle het gesê dat julle gaan wil deel bly van die RNE, maar maak hierdie
to get through the portfolio committee and to get through parliament, and in fact they did, but by what were clearly very devious means, by making the smaller party believe that they were going to withdraw the 0.5% VAT increase, when in fact after that promise the minister's own affidavit to a court, which I've read earlier, made it very clear they were not going to withdraw the 0.5% VAT increase. So it was clearly a question of deceiving the smaller parties that are outside the coalition to get their vote to pass this VAT increase. And so the deception all around is quite mind-boggling. And in most coalitions anywhere in the world, that level of undermining would be fatal to any coalition. In South Africa, we have to have thicker skins than normal. We have to expect the unexpected. We have to pave ways in contexts which don't even exist in other societies. It is not my position to say whether or under what circumstances the GNU should continue. What was at question was whether it should continue after what the ANC did in negotiating with parties outside of the coalition during the votes on the fiscal framework in the Portfolio Committee and in Parliament. And that was a major question. But we decided that we would still win this round, as our court case indicated we were set to do, which is what has forced the minister to want to negotiate a settlement now. So what the future is going to be for the GNU is something that I cannot categorically answer now. A lot will depend on what happens today. There's no doubt that the ANC and the smaller parties will be holding a press conference to triumph the championing of these kinds of discussions and negotiations, as if that is what led to the minister backing down when last week he said he categorically wasn't going to do so. And that also raises the question. We were set to meet the ANC this morning in Johannesburg at 11. Just before midnight last night, I got a notification from Fikile Mbalula that the meeting today at 11 that was scheduled in Johannesburg had been cancelled at short notice, and then that the minister and the ANC were going to be holding a press conference with smaller parties outside the GNU. Now that in itself is extraordinary. It is simply extraordinary. There's no other way to frame it. What we have been asking for since the very beginning of the mooted VAT increase is now coming to pass. The minister has conceded that we were right in our arguments from the beginning, and yet he seeks to undermine his major coalition partner by holding a press conference with parties outside the coalition to claim victory on a point that we have been fighting for since the very beginning, and to claim victory on a point that they did not support when the vote came to the Portfolio Committee or to Parliament. They, in fact, supported the VAT increase. So you cannot put all of these ironies into one coherent political space. It is one contradiction after another. And most certainly, depending on what comes out of the press conference today, we are now scheduled to have the meeting with the ANC tomorrow, and I have no doubt that all of these developments will be on the agenda. Moet Gorongwana bedank. Ek kan nie dink aan 'n groot verleentheid wat 'n minister van Finansies moet deurmaak as om voet by stuk te hou oor 'n verhoging in BTW om dan op die laaste nippertjie te moet terugtrek. deur die advies van sy regsverteenwoordigers. En dis presies wat hier gebeur. So, hy is teruggedruk deur die oppositie van die DA se kant, as ook van sy regsadviseur se kant, wat definitief hom aangeraai het dat hy geen kans het om hierdie hofsaak te wen nie. Dit is 'n baie groot terugslag, en hy het uit die staanspoor uit daarop aangedring dat BTW moet verhoog word, en ek dink daar gaan groot druk op minister Gorongwana wees ook uit die ANC se kant, dat hy dalk sal moet bedank. Okay, sure. I always try and answer the question in the language that was asked, but that's fine. What I'm saying is that there can't be a greater embarrassment for a finance minister than to have been so adamant that a VAT increase was essential, to have repeated that in his court papers a week ago, to have refused to buckle to any pressure or any negotiations or any advice from anybody, and then now suddenly to have to back down in the face of clear advice by his lawyers that he was unlikely to win the case in court, and to avoid the humiliation of an adverse court order, rather to offer to settle before that happens. That in itself is a massive embarrassment for the finance minister, and certainly in a normal democracy, a finance minister wouldn't survive that. But as I have said, in South Africa, nothing is normal. And certainly coalition politics is not your common garden variety coalition that you get internationally.
I believe that we have watched that very particular video. There is something I acknowledge, I picked out of there. I think this is not the end of the fight, because from what they said, they are still in court. And it makes meaning, because why I said it makes meaning is that they are still in court, and this is out of court settlement. And we don't know whether they are still going to agree. If they do not agree, that is to say, they will continue on their court. Remember that their court case should be heard by next week, and I believe they are going to meet before that time. And it is only what will tell whether they will proceed or not to proceed. But for now, it is a win to them that they have been approached for them to settle out of court. If there is anything you think that is going to happen, whether it's going to happen or it's not going to happen, please drop it on the comment section. Let's see, or let's hear what you have in mind towards this winning or victory the DA have just called this very particular conference briefing that they have given to us today. But until then, please say what you think on the comment section, and let's hear what is in your mind. Thank you. I still remain your host, Michael. Until I come your way again, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to press the button bell so that we can notify you when we have this kind of thing. Thank you and bye. Remain safe wherever you are.